Hey, Collective. No reading tonight, just a rant about the things I'm seeing just pop up in the headlines about what's coming out of Texas. So if you don't want to hear about politics and whatnot, you can go ahead and pass on this video. But in that same token, if you don't do politics, can you start? Uh, yeah, you too, kitten, although you're not old enough. Sorry. Maybe in cat years. She's very contradictory to my mood right now. But, ma'am, can you please not? What? Uh, when I was just seeing the news out of Texas that a black female lawmaker is trapped for what seems to be will be overnight. And what led to that is pretty horrific. Uh, Really an overreach from the legislature in response to her trying to save democracy. That's legitimately what her and her Democratic colleagues are trying to do with fleeing Texas to stop that vote and the gerrymandering and so on and so forth. Ma'am, can you please stop? Yeah, I know I'm very angry and you can tell. If you hear me say, quite frankly, that's very thinly veiled Caucasian rage. uh, I think that was my swear word of choice in my duty to disobey video rant about the need to abolish ICE. So, this is pretty bad. Uh, they are trying to do everything in their power to save democratically elected elections. I don't quite know how to phrase that. But, I mean, if this doesn't scare the absolute crap out of you at this point, I don't actually know what will. Because I thought snatching brown people off of the streets was bad enough, and when they were following the rules and going to immigration hearings, which shouldn't even exist because we stole this place. This isn't ours. It's not ours to tell other people who can live here and who can't either. The arrogance of white people. And I get to say that. I'm in the club. I don't really know what to do at this point, though. I clearly was not prepared for this. Just watching Netflix, getting ready to paint my nails, scented candle going. How bad does it have to get before we do something meaningful to stop this tide? Because right now it seems like the only hope that we have is the governor in California. Which is good. At least we have him to stand up. I'm really insanely disappointed in all of our other blue state and even purple state governors to not be joining the fray with him. And maybe they don't have the ability to do what he's doing with seats to kind of counter what Texas is doing. But, I mean, if democratic elections matter to you, either in the states or out, especially out, like, don't you want the country with the largest military in the world to have democratic elections? Maybe not a dictatorship, just a thought. That's would be my preference to not go down that path. But seeing as we have I don't even remember the budget on the ballroom that there are plans and such for at the White House. Would you be planning on actually leaving your job in a few years if you were making a like $500 million gold plated ballroom? That doesn't seem like the move. Like, oh, let me get this ready for the next guy, go through all the rigmarole for permits and finding that much gold. And you think he's gonna leave? And if so, what are you smoking? Because I want some of that so that I can check out of this dystopian nightmare, at least for an evening. Because I am painfully aware. And that is such a literal term. Like, having even the remotest of ability of critical thought right now hurts. But that kind of brings me back to my musing of I don't know what to do. We're all so wrapped up in just trying to survive, trying to make it to the next paycheck. And that wealth gap is just widening and widening. For someone to not be like waiting on their next check to some degree, how much money do they have to make, Because I live in what's considered a high cost of living area. I don't know if a different kind of area exists anymore. Things are pretty bad for the bottom of the pyramid. And getting in touch with your anger, I think, is going to be really important to finding fuel to get through the type of things that we're seeing and finding ways to express that. And I don't mean like repressing it and putting it on the back burner of like that I don't do politics tact. How can you channel that? One of the things that really grinds my gears is how much content I see online of people arguing just senselessly with people that are never going to agree with them. That energy can be redirected to mobilizing people that are on your side, people that want to preserve things like democracy and elections and whatnot, and maybe want to protect their neighbors. They're the immigrants now, but fellow white people who love taking ancestry tests, where are you from? Where's your family from? How proud of you are that right now? Are you of that? It's weird grammar. I'm angry. And feeling a bit lost. And it feels so Orwellian to be going on this type of rant right now and just doing my nails as I do it. What incredible privilege I have to sit here and be mad about things that haven't, at a minimum, come for me yet. Living with mental illness, whatnot. I might be further up on the list than, at a minimum, the straight white male property owners. But there's a lot of local, I guess, grassroots movements and such that are starting to pop up. Namely, stopice.net. I don't know what to do in reference to the legislator held in the Capitol. Maybe pay attention to Jasmine Crockett. I think would be a good person to keep an eye on as a lighthouse through this storm to see what kind of recommendations or, lighting a fire under people that she's going to do. Because this is scary times. And I think it's important to acknowledge that part too. That maybe up until this point, if you haven't spoken up yet, maybe it's because you're afraid. And that's okay. This is really scary. And masked thugs in unmarked vehicles just eroding due process overnight is terrifying. Even more so if you're brown or black or you have an accent. How many people do you think are in those communities that voted for the right because they thought they might get protection? Because it might save them. What a complicated moral position to be in. So for those of us that are closer to center on the marginalization wheel, we have a moral and ethical obligation to use our privilege to speak up however we may. Start a faceless YouTube account. I'm doing this through tarot, but there are other things to do. What about motorcycle maintenance? Can't see your face, but we can hear you talk. And what about book reviews or painting or stuff like that? There's so many accounts that I see that those are venues to get messages out. People are getting so creative, talking about things. And we have to, because there are a lot of things that are not showing up on the news that are showing up on our streets. And in no short supply of mass thugs that are operating on maximum terror. That's what they're doing to people who are abiding by a system that should never exist. Who are we to say who can and can't live here? And the thing I saw Trump tweet about floating the idea of starting a war to cancel the next election. He is following the pattern of narcissistic abuse, of testing, towing the line of the Schrodinger's douchebag. You don't know if it's a joke or not until you provide your reaction. And I think he as an individual is a buffoon. And I get to use my First Amendment right while I still have that. While it's still legal for women to think in this country to criticize the government. And he's at the top of my list to criticize. I get to do that. And I'm going to get to do that longer than other people, which is an absolute travesty. Because it's only because of the color of my skin. Or the sound of my voice, my relatively neutral affect. Or accent, not necessarily affect, but. And that I'm articulate. That I went to public school in an affluent area that had good education. Good teachers that got resources that other teachers didn't. I am just so mad. And that rat in a cage feeling. It just I feel like I'm going around faster and faster and faster in this stupid little cage I don't know how to get out of. And it's so much easier for me than other people. I literally cannot even imagine what is happening to people with accents. And there is still a part of me that's hanging on to hope. At this point, I don't know why. I feel like we're in free fall. Maybe this is the destructive change that we need to see, the error of our ways, of how broken our system is, and how it fails to protect our most vulnerable. Because all of the protections for any of this are things that are enacted like retroactively after the fact, after the harm has been done, as if anybody on the bottom of the pyramid can wait for results. And that's how this cycle gets perpetuated, is that the backs that this system runs on are so worn out, are so desperate. We just keep marching forward. Because we've been dissociating for years, for decades. Because it's the only way to survive. We are at the mercy of the few. And, I was actually having a really tough day today, and I was having a hard time even accepting just that it's okay to have my own tough day, that I don't need to expand the scope that far, because I immediately go to like diminishing and trauma responses and such, because it's hard to think that like my problems are that bad when my tax dollars are being used against my will to starve and bomb children. And we have to acknowledge when we're having a tough day, because there are going to be more. And I'm not that spiritual guru who's going to tell you, have you tried gratitude? Have you tried getting mad? Have you tried getting absolutely furious about what's going on and not burying your head in the sand anymore? Because having to live in cognitive dissonance is absolutely torture. It's horrible. And I think we are collectively traumatized. After everything we went through in the pandemic, we jumped to this. It's just thing after thing after thing that we have to dissociate from in order to survive. I have no solutions. The only thing I have is a voice. And hopefully I can reach one other person that will speak up. Because the bottom of the pyramid is the largest slice. And I keep seeing this stat go around that all we need is 3.5% of a population to stand up, to rise up, to where whomever in power either needs to concede to our will to give us what we want, or collapse. Because it cannot withstand that percentage of people standing up. So no advice, no solutions, just an ask that you use your voice to speak up for any of these things. Even if it's a 30-second video, however long this video has ended up to be. Just one thing. Add one drop to that bucket, and it'll overflow. I hope this helps.